Welcome back to Open Line. We are talking about several different aspects of criminal justice reform. The major one, certainly that we started out the show discussing, is the number of people arrested for misdemeanors who aren't allowed, they can't afford, number of people who cannot afford to make bail. As a result, they stay in jail until their trial. It could be months. Hedy Weinberg with ACLU says that is unconstitutional and is seeking to change that, right?
Well, we believe that it is unfair. It's targeting people based on economic status, and the violation, as we see it, is to begin with due process, the right to have a hearing to understand whether or not the individual, if they are eligible for bond.
You want to change it?
Yep.
You want to change
We want to change it.
Let's go to Wayne. Hello, Wayne.
Yeah, good evening. I have a simple question. What is the daily cost to keep somebody in jail? And I'm pretty sure that the taxpayers, foot the bill. But I just want to add, they have a program that is working. It's called mental health court.
Yes.
When you go in jail and they determine you have a mental disorder or on medications, they immediately release you. They ask you to come back once every 30 days for 1 year. And each time you go before the judge, it gives you a schedule of what you have to do before you come back. And they do random drug screens, and it's very effective because people, they see, they did something wrong, but they got somebody supporting them saying, if you keep doing this, then we'll help you. Mm-hmm. So I just want to add that.
All right, thank you.
And I think you raise a really important point, which is thinking about alternatives to incarceration. We have gotten to a place where we think that the only thing we can do is lock people up, and there are many more ways to focus on individuals, to not only support them, to provide some, I guess people call it punishment, but at the same time recognize they're going to return to our communities, and that we want to provide the resources to help them re-enter. So when you talk about drug court, not only is it drug court, but it's also recognizing that so many people who are touched by the criminal justice system are there because they have substance abuse issues, they have mental health issues, and that we're not doing anyone, meaning the community at large as well as the individual, not doing anyone favors by just locking them up and putting them behind bars. And when people think about the money we're spending, and that's often right now what's attracting more people to this issue, they begin to see that we're spending so much money locking people up, and it's not helping create a safer community. Because again, people who are sent to jail or sent to prison, we see that they return usually within 3 years. I mean, the stats are probably about 40%.
He was asking the cost per day.
So, I think it's between 25 and 30,000 a year, so you'd have to divide that.
Work it out from there. Okay, let's go to William. Hello, William.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Yes, I think we have to separate two things here. One is employment, because when police pull you over and they put you in jail, they get paid. And there are people working in the jail, they need to keep their job. So people become like a commodity for the government unless the society, community sit down and say we don't have to pay this money to lock people up. If somebody kills somebody, that's a different thing.
Right.
But if people have arguments, and then like my case was me and a corporation, they stole my money, they scared me, and I was one ending up being arrested and charged. I spent 11 days in the jail, and I refused to eat for 11 days.
All right, let's talk about that. I think a little hard to understand, and that's our phone. I'm sorry, William, but he's saying people become like a commodity to the government, that the government is making money off of this. Somebody's making money, but what do you think about what he's saying there?
Well, I think, William, if you're talking about the private prison industry, you're right, people are making money. I don't think the government's making money. I think the government is using taxpayers' money in an ineffective, inefficient way. But we do have a very troubling system where in Tennessee and across the country, private prison companies are in fact, they have been given the responsibility because of contracts that have been signed between government and these private prisons to lock people up. And so the private prisons are more concerned about their stockholders and making that profit. So you're totally right when you talk about a commodity and how the private prison industry, in fact, has created that relationship. I think private prisons are, in fact, in part responsible for the mass incarceration, because some of their contracts with local cities require that they have a certain occupancy rate that they're paid for, even if the occupancy rate is not met. So we need to step back, and that's what I think is really exciting, even though we had Attorney General Jeff Sessions come to our city and talk about the need to lock more people up. The reality is, at our legislature, in our communities, with ACLU and Beacon and the Tennessee Association of Goodwill Industries and the Chamber and the Tennessee County Services Association, these 5 groups have created something called the Tennessee Coalition on Sensible Justice. And our commitment and our work is focused on increasing awareness about why locking people up is not good for our communities, not good for public safety, not a good use of taxpayer dollars, and certainly not a good way to think about ensuring that anyone who's touched by the criminal justice system is treated fairly and equally.
You'd be hard-pressed to find a more red legislature than ours here in Tennessee. But you're saying you feel like there is a chance to move this forward in this legislature, in this state, some of these reforms that you're talking about.
No question. Now, one has to be patient, and we move slowly, but we've had the Tennessee Coalition on Sensible Justice is working with members on both sides of the aisle and really seeing some great successes. They are baby steps. They are getting wider, longer strides each year, and I think we are confident. Again, this is a broad-based coalition. This is ACLU, this is Beacon, this is Goodwill, this is the Chamber. Really talking with legislators and constituents across the state, saying, what do we do to ensure public safety, to protect our tax dollars, and to ensure that people are treated fairly and equally.
Let's go to Reverend Fuzz. Hello, Reverend Fuzz.
Hey, Dan. Hi, Hedy.
Hey, how are you?
That one quick thing, since 1990, I remember, I can go back at least that point, 1990, the annual cost for keeping somebody incarcerated was like $25,000 to $30,000. I'm sure it's doubled by now, but I'm just saying. But I want to ask, I don't believe that we can really make a difference with our current legislature. You know, you make a little headway. Hedy, I want to push for what legislators fear or what they respect is people voting. Now, you know that most of these people, a lot of them are African American. I think it's not about black and white. I think it's really poverty. That where you see poverty, you got the same numbers of people being locked up, whether they black, white, Hispanic, Mexican, Baptist, or whatever. And you got to realize how many people, it frustrates me through the years in my church, I've had to go to court with and go to jail with. And I can think of so many young men right now who are in jail, and think of his 6 children, and the man in Louisville who's, you know, just so many things. I'm saying the only way to fix this, and ask your comment, is that we've got to mobilize people to go out and vote. They fear the NRA, that National Rifle Association, because they can mobilize their votes. Why don't we, with these kind of social justice, if you will, issues, mobilize and teach people how to vote and get them to vote, and let these legislators know, hey, we want people who care about us, because all of this happened in the legislature.
Right.
That's where the lockup and all that, you know, 3 strikes and out happened in the legislature. Let's get legislators who say, okay, there's another way. That's my thought. What do you think?
I think you're right. There's no question that people have to register, and they have to then follow up with voting. And there's some fabulous work happening. And again, it just has to, the drumbeat. We have to keep at it, but it's from the League to the Equity Alliance to the NAACP to the ACLU to all these groups working and are out there not only registering but focusing on get out the vote. I will say you bring up, or you didn't bring up, but I want to bring up another really important issue, which is voter disenfranchisement. The fact is, in our state, 1 out of 5 individuals who are black are disenfranchised. The system is just corrupt. The fact is that we have started to identify, well, let me step back. The fact is that individuals, if they've been convicted of a felony in our state, have to work very hard to get their voting rights back. They have to complete their prison sentence, they have to complete probation, parole, pay restitution, pay court fines and fees, and this is different than any other state in the country, they have to be current in child support. Just not acceptable that financial obligations are what keep people from getting their voting rights restored. So there is a wonderful campaign that's building statewide to, one, try to move toward increasing awareness so that the public understands that, because most people I talk to out in the community don't realize that if you're convicted of a felony, it's very difficult to get, that you lose your rights, and then getting them back is very difficult, 1, because of the cumbersome process, and 2, because of the financial obligations.
That's one of the things I see that you are supporting, is support access to the ballot box for people with felony convictions who have completed their sentences. What would you change? What in that list of things they have to do would you change? Do you think should be changed?
Ideally, that no one ever loses their voting rights because of felony conviction, and that in New England, I think it's Maine and Vermont. I think those 2 states, you never lose your rights. But that's visionary. But so for Tennessee, I would say that you serve your prison sentence, and when you get out of prison, your voting rights are automatically restored. And the reason for that, frankly, is that once you leave prison, you need to reintegrate into our community and into society. And it's very difficult. We need to ease that re-entry process. The reality is voting right, it's a cornerstone of democracy. It's a way to use your voice. It's not the first thing I think someone's going to do when they leave prison, but it is a recognition that my voice counts. And so allowing someone to cast their vote is another step toward helping them reintegrate. There's a whole lot more we have to do in terms of education and access to housing and employment, but voting, you know, you should not lose that franchise, certainly after you've served your prison sentence, but most importantly, you should not lose it just based on your ability to pay back
Reverend
fines
Fuzz
and fees.
said people need to vote.
Definitely.
And you're saying people feel disenfranchised, or are which is certainly accurate in many ways on both sides. But another thing that is accurate is a few things test as well as for politicians as standing up saying, I'm going to be tough on crime and we're going to do this and that, and maybe 3 strikes you're out. At least that's been the case for many, many years. Do you think that is changing, or is that language still going to resonate with a lot of voters?
You know, I think it's no longer tough or soft on crime. I think there are some legislators and politicians who still want to use that lingo, but the reality is people recognize on both sides of the aisle, and especially from within the conservative communities, from the Koch brothers to Right on Crime, people recognize that it's a waste of taxpayer dollars to just want to lock people up. It's just not the best use of our dollars. Now, ACLU was involved in it for another reason, right? It's about justice, it's about equality, it's about getting rid of the racial disparities that's just rampant in our criminal justice system. But we have the opportunity now, with more awareness and with pushing the ease that people can vote, we have the ability to see change happen in our state, and I think all over the country. Unfortunately, in the White House right now and with the Attorney General, they do not see criminal justice reform as an important place to be. But I think the voices and the chorus has grown very loud, and it's really kind of a beautiful sound. So I think we will move forward.
All right, we're going to take a break, and then I promise we're going to take a bunch of calls. So if you're on the line, hold on. We will get to your call, take a break, be back right after this.